Welcome to the Center Mid Philosopher. This episode is brought to you by Augustus Royale Fashion. Life's not black and white, it's gray, and gray is beautiful. Check out the brand below in the link. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's episode of the Center Mid Philosopher. We are in the presence of greatness today, viewers and listeners. Super flattered and honored to have the esteemed Dr. Pavel Brunssen joining us from Germany. There's no. I'm probably going to do you a disservice in this introduction. There's no shortage of accolades coming your way, but Dr. Pavel Brunssen, Research Associate, and Alfred Landecker Lecturer in Research Center on Antigypsyism at the Heidelberg University, the preeminent, most famous subject matter expert on anti-Semitism and in memory cultures in European football and soccer, holds a PhD in German studies from our very own University of Michigan, constant speaker on the topic of discrimination and fan cultures in the world of football and soccer, author of a couple different books, and I want to hear you explain those a little bit more in depth as well. And, most recently have been giving an article and some think pieces on anti-Semitism against RB Leipzig, a club that we've spoken quite a bit about on this show, actually. And so I will just stop there because I could just keep on going on. But Pavel, welcome.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Thank you so much for your introduction. So again, we for the viewers and listeners, we were just talking hardball because Pavel has his PhD from University of Michigan. So you tell the viewers and listeners you're a big football fan, right?
I am, yes. I unfortunately only stayed in Ann Arbor myself for 2 years because COVID kicked in and I went to Germany for the summer, and then I was not allowed to go back because the former president had some ideas about international students coming back to the country and so on.
Sure.
But I had a season ticket for Michigan football for 2 years, as well for the basketball team of the university. And I'm still following all the games, all the coverage from Germany, and I really hope that our team can make it to the final this year and win it.
Yeah, you have a good shot. So tell the viewers and listeners a little bit more about some of the books that you've written, because I'm going to do it to disservice. And again, viewers and listeners, if you haven't, go out and buy these books. They're fascinating. I've read almost all of every bit of it. But tell the viewers and listeners a little bit more.
Sure, I'm happy to. So the first book is a monograph about anti-Semitism against RB Leipzig, which started actually as my master's thesis in Berlin at the Research Center on Anti-Semitism, and then developed further while I was in Michigan, working with Professor Andy Markowitz, big expert scholar on anti-Semitism, football, and so on. Before I worked with the director in Berlin of the center, Stefanie Schüler-Springorum. I'm very grateful to both of those. And what happened is I wrote a couple of additional chapters after it. The main thesis of the book is why is RB Leipzig the most hated enemy in German soccer? Why is it that the ultras group, the active supporters who bring the flags, the atmosphere, to the soccer stadiums are boycotting the away games? So most of them are not going to the away games at RB Leipzig, but they go to all other games. They make it a habit or a passion to go to every game. They're not going to Leipzig. Why is it? And you basically have a checklist there of anti-Semitic tropes. They give you as reasons. They write long, thoughtful pieces about why they are not going. It's modern. It's global. It's commercial, it's new, it's not authentic, it's not local. So everything that people attributed to Jews over the last centuries, people are accusing RB Leipzig of. Even before the club had the first practice session or the first game, people were fighting this club immensely. And I think there is something there that You are supporting a club like Borussia Dortmund or Bayern Munich, millions and millions of euros each year revenue, the most expensive teams in German soccer, very successful. And you are anti-commercial, anti-money in football and so on. And you cannot fight your own club because you love it. And then RB Leipzig comes, well, thank you. Here is someone I can actually fight and hate. And until today, people are hating RB Leipzig like no other club in German soccer.
So is the thinking in your stance essentially that it's essentially anti-Semitism, but masked as anti-commercialization and not local and maybe a little bit of xenophobia, but it's really at its core rooted in anti-Semitism? Is that kind of what your stance is?
It is, and it also answers the question why in post-1945 Germany, and I would even go so far to say post-1945 Europe, there seems to be no anti-Semites left. No one wants to be an anti-Semite anymore, but there is still anti-Semitism.
Right.
And the answer to this is because it gives you an advantage. It gives you something that explains the world. It has always been an ideology, an idea of rebellion against the bankers, against supposed conspiracies, against, I don't know, the East Coast in the United States or whatever. And this applies also to German soccer. And the interesting twist here is that some of these people who engage in it are actively engaged in memory work or anti-discrimination activities. So it's not limited to, I don't know, far-right hooligans, if you might think in the beginning, but it's actually spreading across soccer, and people are not talking about Jews. So it's a bit more complicated way of thinking and feeling. Anti-Semitism as a specific way of understanding the world, of thinking and feeling. This is what I'm trying to make an argument in this book.
That's really fascinating. And it sounds like almost what you're suggesting is that it's not overt, it's covert, but it's almost even so covert that the folks guilty of these behaviors maybe don't even necessarily, maybe aren't even cognizant of those, that it's manifesting in that way. Is that part of it as well?
Exactly. You got it absolutely right. So it's not the intention that I'm talking about. Are these people going to be Jew haters tomorrow because today they hate RB Leipzig? I don't think so. But they are also not going to challenge the system of football or of soccer or capitalism or whatever. They are going to, their plan is to destroy RB Leipzig and thereby saving what they think is the traditional way of soccer that is rooted, that is a Volkssport, to throw in a German term here, and really make it about RB Leipzig and not about their clubs anymore.
Yeah. That's fascinating, and thank you for that. And that's really interesting and terrible, frankly. I want to hear a little bit more about you and your background and what drove you to have this noble pursuit and calling in educating the world on anti-Semitism and anti-Gypsyism, which is extremely important to me and to everyone, and it continues to be to this very day. How did you get here? Why did you choose this prestigious niche? And why? I'd love to hear more about you just as a fan of the game and your history as a player. And what teams do you support? And what led you to go down this path?
My history as a player is very short. I think it stopped when I was 14 years old. So I played in a couple of very bad performing youth teams in Bremen in northern Germany, where I grew up.
Cool.
But one reason why I stopped playing was also because we played at the same time as the local Bundesliga club, Werder Bremen, which I was a big fan of since I can think or feel or whatever. I grew up with my window facing the stadium lights at the time when Werder Bremen was still playing during the week in European competitions, old days, but good days. And I could hear the people scream, I could see the lights, and it was magic. And I started to go there as a child. And when I grew a bit older, I don't know, maybe 12, 13, 14 years old, and I became something like a more political conscious human being. And there was a tension in the stadium between experiencing a place where I felt at home, where it felt like I want to be there every weekend. I want to go to the away games. I want to be among these fans, celebrate the goals and the team. And at the same time, I realized people were chanting stuff like Schwarz-Weiß-Blau Judenhass, which translates to the colors of the main rival, Hamburger SV, from a town nearby where I'm based now, actually, at the moment, and calling them the Jews. And there were chants about sending the opponents to Auschwitz, to the concentration and death camp of Auschwitz. There were away players when they... Yeah, me too. Actually, with other soccer supporters and people working in soccer, there's a whole educational program about fans doing workshops there. I'm happy to talk about. But maybe just to add, the racism that I experienced, people chanting asylum seekers when players were entering the Werder Bremen home field before their games to warm up and so on. And I also experienced fans getting together and doing something about it. Today you don't hear it anymore. There were even fights happening between different fan groups. And today Werder Bremen is known for at least some supporters groups who are anti-racist, against anti-Semitism, inviting refugees to the game, as getting to know each other, new people in the city and so on, and being very socially active. Now Christmas is approaching soon, and supporters are mobilizing other supporters to give away, I don't know, jackets or blankets or so on for the homeless people in Bremen. And there's a lot of social power in these clubs. And I started a magazine as a journalist actually in 2012, which ran for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. And then after that, I got more onto the scholarly side because I wanted to delve in even deeper than I could as a journalist, writing about these topics, and wrote these books about anti-Semitism, about Jewish identities, and now the new research project is on racism against Sinti and Roma people in football, in soccer.
Wow. Well, thank you for your work, and again, just unbelievable to have you on. And never has there been a more important time to be doing what you're doing than now, as you and I emailed back and forth about the atrocities and horror going on with Hamas and Israel and Gaza. And, so much of it can manifest itself in soccer and football, is that a lot of the xenophobia and fearing cultures that are different than themselves, and it continues to run rampant to this very day. And I'd love to just kind of get your thoughts on the role soccer football plays in a setting like the Hamas-Israel conflict right now, where I think what's interesting that I'm seeing a lot of is that you've got players like Mo Salah receiving tons of criticism for not really having a bigger stance, players that are trying to just really remain peaceful about it. And, we talked about one of the Maccabi Haifa players receiving a lot of criticism for not having more of a stance. What role do you feel like football, soccer has in this horrible situation right now? Should the players have more of a stance? How is this complicating fan bases? How is this complicating fans' allegiances to players and clubs?
I think it's very complicated to talk about individual players and their statements. Sometimes it's very easy, but it's also very polarizing. We might start with a different example from Germany about this, from Bayern Munich, actually, where the right defender Nusir Mazraoui shared a post hoping that the Palestinians will have the total victory, which of course means the eradication of Israel in this sense. And there was a lot of discussion, criticism about it. He was not suspended or anything. There was a similar incident with Mainz 05, a different club from the Bundesliga. They suspended their player. And, all kinds of ideas about what is the right way to go about it. And I didn't like how it started, that there was not a strong reaction by either the player saying something like, well, I actually didn't intend to say X and what Hamas did was wrong or something, but just, I'm against terrorism and very kind of not clear about anything. So was the club, which, by the way, also has an Israeli goalkeeper. So I think there's a lot of, even within the team, room for discussion, maybe solidarity in a very difficult situation. I know from groups of, for instance, writers in different countries around the world who did statements like, we're working together as Jews and Arabs, as Israelis and Palestinians, getting together, sharing a vision of a better world. And this is a difficult time, and we try to support each other. Mm-hmm. This is the least you can do, I think. But what is happening now with Bayern Munich and the player is that they are starting a conversation with the local Jewish community and with the Maccabi sports movement. So the Jewish sports movement in Germany, more on the amateur side, of course, but very active as clubs in bringing different people together. They only have about 20% of the people who are doing sport at Maccabi are actually Jewish. Mm-hmm. There are Muslims, Christians, atheists, whatever, different nationalities, different religions. And they are playing together and making a statement through playing together for a Jewish club. And I think it's great that the player now is getting, involved in some kind of activities that might change. Well, and maybe one more thing about players as role models. I'm a bit skeptical. Yes, it's important, but it's only one part of a club culture. It matters what a club is writing into his, stadium policies, whether they say, if you're going to make a racist comment, you are going to get kicked out, mm-hmm. Whether they make a statement on the video board, whether they, invite Jewish and Muslim communities to their games, for instance, mm-hmm. and give, make a statement by inviting them. And a player as a symbol of identification only goes so far.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's the social media component of this is such a novel thing to the world where, there's, as we all know, there's good and there's quite a lot of bad with social media, and, never more typified than in sport where, these players have thousands and millions of followers and a lot of influence, and in a lot of cases they're thrust into situations where they're not really equipped to do much of anything with that influence. And in this situation, not inaction is a negativity, so it's almost like they've had to become sophisticated thought leaders on an unbelievably complicated matter. But I am glad that you touched on, with sport, in any sport, and certainly the world of football and soccer across the globe, it's the ugliest of the ugly and sometimes the most beautiful of beautiful things. And I'm glad that you highlighted a lot of where the beautiful game can have a role here to encourage and foster unity and, working across different religions and socioeconomic divides. And, I'd like to think in some small way, maybe they can be part of the healing out of this. And I know we're deep into it and there's a lot to come, but I appreciate you sharing that with us. And, going a little further, like in the book, chapter 14, Andrei Markovits talks about what makes the beautiful game so ugly, and on tribalism and addiction and affliction in the game, that the bunker mentality of the us versus them. Why is this the case? Like, what is, in your opinion, and this is really broad, but what is it about sports, and particularly soccer and football, that makes tolerant people so tribal? And, why are these ugly traits even more pronounced in team sports than in individual ones? What have you found in your studies?
It's a great question, and I believe the main thing is the game itself. It offers the structure of us versus them, of competitiveness. We have two halves of the game, two warming up areas, a home section for supporters, an away section, different colors. And fans perceive their teams not as something that is just leisure time or enjoyment, but something very serious. And winning is very crucial. And it's crucial that they understand the team and the players as kind of an extension of themselves, which means they represent their city in the competition with other cities like Bremen and Hamburg, or not in soccer, but in football, Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State. It's not fun. I mean, to some maybe it is, but if you're a serious fan, it's not. It's very, very crucial. And then I believe you can still make a decision. So there also comes in an individual aspect. You can discriminate against your opponent by saying you are gypsies, you are Jews, you are Muslims, you are whatever, you are gays, all these evil things. Or you can say, well, I can have this competitiveness, but at the same time, I can understand football also as this wonderful place where people are coming together, and I need my rival. Being a Michigan fan is not as much fun without Ohio State. So please don't take that game out of the schedule. I want it every season. Or Werder Bremen against Hamburg, who are now playing in the second league, which is, fun to watch, but also kind of sad because I want the rivalry game. I want the derby. So there is a decision to make, but it's this structural component of us versus them winning, specifically in Europe, where the fan culture, I think, in soccer is different than in the United States, where it's the main hegemonic sport. Mm-hmm. It's the leading sport. It's the more masculine sport. Mm-hmm. It's not like football, basketball or so, where you have a more individualized supporter culture. You go to a game maybe with a couple of friends, have a few beers, burger, tailgating, whatever, and then the game is back and forth. It goes, 3.5, 4 hours. In the media timeouts, you have something on the video screen. So you have kind of this entertainment built in. And in soccer, you have 2 times of 45 minutes of where you're very anxious about the next goal because it may decide who's winning. It's a low-scoring game, so there's a big tension there for supporters. While at the same time, it's also a bit boring at times because in Germany, for instance, Bayern Munich has won the last, 10 or 11 titles. And so if I'm a supporter of another club, I may also invite something which the supporters did, these ultras, these hardcore fans, which I call the second game. So there is now a competition between the supporters of Club A and B about who has the better banners, flags, chants, maybe even who has the better mob, the more violent mob outside in the street. I mean, there's little violence in European soccer. We talk a lot about it, but it's actually on a low scale, I would argue, specifically compared to the 1980s. But yeah, I think all these factors together, the architecture, the importance, the seriousness, the low scoring, what's the hegemonic sport culture in the country, coming together, and then finally you go kind of individual into a mass of people. So it's in a way it's anonymous. You can kind of hit in the masses, but at the same time it's super public. There are TV cameras everywhere. So if you do something there, it's going to be talked about. It's going to get noticed. So you have also this interesting mix of being public and being kind of not public.
That's fascinating. And I hadn't ever thought of, that's such an interesting point about the structure of the game, that it is elongated for 45 minutes and that tension is stretched and kind of amplified really to its absolute fiber. Whereas a lot of American sports, as you mentioned, there's it's all these forced, TV timeouts and stuff. It kind of maybe alleviates a little pressure. I think that was a really fascinating point. And I think one of the things I've found so fascinating in all of your pieces and everything I've read, and I completely agree with, is just that, like, it's a real sociological experiment and analysis where it's almost animalistic. And I remember, I think I emailed you that, like, I remember years and years ago when I was a teenager, was watching an old school documentary on the Planet of the Apes, the Charlton Heston, the old school ones, about how the people that were playing the chimpanzees ate together. The people playing the orangutans ate lunch together. The people playing the gorillas ate lunch together. And that was about as arbitrary as it could get. But even in that, they started to kind of congregate together. And what point I'm making is that a lot of these fandoms and teams literally just start as simple as, we're wearing red, you're wearing blue. Or we're on this, in America, Michigan, Ohio State, you're right there. And, in Europe, it can be as simple as, we're on, London there's 20 some clubs in London. It can really be as simple as, we live on this side of the street, you live on that side of the street, but we lose sight of the fact that, hey, we're still the same. And, I think with, I'm a UNC Tar Heels Chapel Hill guy, and, Duke, we're 8 miles apart, one of the fiercest rivalries. But we still try to maintain that respect for one another as, highly academic institutions. And, some of your best friends from growing up are just right down the road from you. And, and you kind of touched on this, but, like, what advice would you give to soccer fans and football fans across the globe, and also those new to ardent fandom in America, the viewers and listeners, as they continue to advance their fandom for teams, as soccer is still so, it's still in its infancy here in America. What would you say to fans here to maintain what we have going on here, where we're not necessarily wanting to get in the streets and beat each other up and with hooligans in the MLS games? What would you say to keep doing what we're doing, or maybe change a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know if I can give advice, but what I can say is from what I observed at a couple of soccer games. I went to Detroit City FC, Portland Timbers, New York Red Bulls, some others. And there was a very fine fan culture, I think. And it's often unnoticed in Europe, and unfortunately so, because I think the supporters groups are having good chance. You see something that you do not see in European soccer stadiums, where the main groups of ultras, of hardcore fans who are organizing all the support. In Europe, it's all white men. And in the US, you see women, you see blacks, whites. It's just diverse. Mm-hmm. And I think this is also a reflection of the space of soccer in the United States. Is kind of, there are the big four, and then there is soccer is kind of something exceptional. But at the same time of the understanding of these groups, that their clubs are part of the community. Mm-hmm. And I think this is maybe the most important thing to understand if you're more on the side of football, soccer as a positive force. It's very basic, but very important to understand that soccer is part of society, and it's political, and it's culturally important. Mm-hmm. When I talk to managers of clubs about anti-Semitism and what they can do about it and so on, it's often, well, we don't have a problem, and we have to maintain that we play every weekend. We have to pay our staff. We have to manage our staff. We have to manage our stadium. So this idea that there is a core of a club where you have sport, and then there's politics, and this is outside the stadium. And of course, it's not the case, but it's still an idea that is widespread and in many heads of people working in the industry, in the sport. And I think this is still a place, if you understand that your club and your stadium is a political arena that has a space in the city that is extremely important, then you can start to build a position on political questions, and also take care that your club is more than just something that is playing, but also that is bringing people together and talking about issues important to the people who are coming to your club.
Mm-hmm. That's great. You and I, again, just have been enjoying our brief email interaction. You've shared some really awesome articles and we've collaborated on a couple cool ideas. Like as much nastiness as there is in the world right now, there are some really cool, happy stories, and there are some clubs that are doing it right and stand for things like unity and religious pluralism and acceptance and being together, and that we don't have to be so divided. And soccer and football can be a source of unity. And you and I tossed around some ideas of a handful of clubs, but one that jumped out, and you've already touched on them, was Maccabi Haifa. That is, and again, they're being stretched a little thin right now with everything that's going on in the world. But could you explain to the viewers and listeners a little bit of what they have stood for in the recent past in terms of having both Palestinian and Israeli players on their team, whereas a lot of clubs in the region are one or the other? I was just wondering if you could kind of educate the listeners a little bit more on what they're doing well, and other clubs that are like them that maybe the viewers and listeners could get behind, that stand for some really sources of positivity today.
Yeah, Maccabi Haifa is one example where you have a club that stands for having people who you think of as belonging to different groups, separate, maybe even enemies, but playing together in a team, getting to know each other, and representing this idea of football can unify people, bring people together, and thereby maybe contribute to some change in society as well. What we see now is that one of the Arab players is questioned about his loyalty, and so on. So there are discussions about these players, and this is also why I'm a bit careful with these role models, because I think you always have two sides with all these clubs. That the moment, maybe let's look to England and Mo Salah for a second, where the Liverpool fans came up with this chant, well, we love Mo Salah, he's a Muslim, and if he's a Muslim, I want to be a Muslim too. Which is considered. There's even research about arguing that anti-Muslim racism is declining among Liverpool supporters since Mo Salah is playing for Liverpool. But it's wonderful, yet I'm a bit skeptical of this, because I've seen also the case of Mesut Özil in Germany, for instance, where he was the opposite. He was he also played for my favorite club, Werder Bremen. I was there in 2009 when he scored the goal against Leverkusen, winning us the cup. Thank you, Mesut Özil. Wonderful day.
We love you, Özil.
And then the moment the German national team stopped to perform well, people found a scapegoat and said, well, Mesut Özil, he's not playing like the Germans should, physical, aggressive. He's playing technical, avoiding to fight for the ball, instead passing it or making a good move with the ball or so. And he was really under attack. Of course, Mesut Özil now, in recent years, has shown some sympathy for Islamist organizations. So this is also part of the problem I have now with Mesut Özil, his development with the Grey Wolves and organizations that are not positive examples at all. But this is kind of, I think it was not part of this racist debate about him. But I think the same can happen to Mo Salah as well. The moment he stops performing, maybe his perception also changes. There's always this risk for minorities that the moment something changes, see the Hamas attack and the reaction of Israel now with Maccabi Haifa, see Mesut Özil in Germany. So it's not always the end of the story.
That's right.
The positive examples, unfortunately.
Well, and that's, I mean, talk about a theme of all themes that you read from, I had a, I had a very powerful figure in my life in high school, a guy named Mr. Harris, that we studied this stuff intensely, and he was just a very, very passionate teacher of, those that don't understand history are doomed to repeat it. And boy, are we ever reliving that now. And boy, is that time, that's got to be one of your central themes, that we must constantly re-educate and constantly get better and constantly, because it can turn, and it is, like you said, the story's never over. But another cool thing that I've found in researching you and all your reading all your pieces and in your books, and in the chapter 10 that you edited, it talks about some clubs that are really doing some phenomenal things in terms of the constant education and re-education of their fans, and using the club as a means to make sure people don't forget, and Eintracht Frankfurt is one that's mentioned that has some really innovative parts of, like, their club's museum that honors a lot of their Jewish heritage and the Jewish ownership from going back pre-World War II, and it touches on some really interesting things of, like, revisionist history and really refusing to let that happen, and some really cool experiences that they have, and it's just constantly saying, hey, we move on, but we'll never forget. And we talked a little bit more about that. I was wondering if you could tell the listeners and viewers some of the cool things that they're doing, but you also educated me on some really cool clubs like Bayern Munich that are also even doing more of those kinds of things. I just wondered if you could educate everyone a little bit more on clubs that are doing it right and are taking their role and influence over their fans as a positive way to influence today and the youth.
Yeah. The chapter you mentioned from the book Football and Discrimination, Anti-Semitism and Beyond goes back to 2018 conference we organized in Berlin at the Research Center on Anti-Semitism there. And what we wanted to do was to bring together scholars working more on the side of discrimination, exclusion, but then also bring in people like from Eintracht Frankfurt, also from Ajax Amsterdam, or people working with, not really Ajax, but from Amsterdam, from the Anne Frank House, working with Ajax's rivals, Feyenoord Rotterdam. There's a big issue with anti-Semitism there as well, and hear about these stories and learn about them, and see what's going on in the field. And Eintracht Frankfurt is a club where supporters in the early 90s started campaigns against racism. A few years later, people started to study, investigate, research the club's history during National Socialism and the fate of the Jewish club members, and making the biographies also part of their club museum exhibition, educational tours to memorial sites of concentration camps. So not only commemorating them as victims of the Holocaust and Nazism, but also understanding their lives, their experiences, their perspectives, their emotions, their contributions to the clubs. We're talking about people, individual people, not only 6 million Jews, but those people who were in most of the German clubs. Bayern Munich with Kurt Landauer, the former Jewish president. Borussia Dortmund is doing trips to the Auschwitz Memorial Site for over 10 years now. They have done trips, they're multi-day trips, so people stay for 3 or 4 days, getting to know the sites, the history, asking themselves questions in workshops. What about anti-Semitism today? What about the situation in our club, Borussia Dortmund? And from there, actually, I think out of these networks, a group in Dortmund started a fan group that is tackling discrimination in the club today. So I think there are very many inspirational projects, also in the Netherlands, for instance, in FC Utrecht, Feyenoord Rotterdam are doing similar things. Very, very fascinating people there, and a great work.
Awesome. Well, this has just been awesome, and thank you for sharing those. And again, viewers and listeners, if you are looking for some clubs to get behind that stand for unity and positivity and acceptance and a lot of the things that we stand behind at the show here at Center Mid Philosopher, Dr. Brunssen has just educated us on quite a few to get behind that stand for the right things in this world. And there's a lot of dark things in this world, but there can be a lot of beautiful things too. And we're highlighting a lot of those. Well, Dr. Brunssen, I wish we could keep talking forever and ever and ever, but we got to jump to our favorite, the rapid fire questions here at the end. And I got to get you, if you're ready for them.
I'm ready.
All right.
Just be ready that we are now leaving the academic discussion and entering the subjective fan perspective.
Yeah, that's right. So always the favorite, which is Messi or Ronaldo?
Messi, very easy. World Cup, phenomenal player.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's Messi.
We may have to retire that question here. I mean, I think we're not getting a lot of Ronaldos anymore. Especially with Americans, because he kind of captured the hearts and minds of everyone coming to MLS. But Messi or Maradona?
Also Messi, and maybe this is because my generation, Messi is one of the great of my generation. Maradona was, I followed one of his latest years, but Messi, I think, is for me, one of the best.
Oh yeah,
if not the best. Yeah.
How about Ronaldo or Ronaldo? So Cristiano or Il Fenomeno?
Yeah, I actually thought a lot about this question, and I'm still struggling, and not because they are not both great players, but because I'm also always thinking of players as these important. We talked a lot about whether they are role models.
Right,
and
right.
With Cristiano Ronaldo, you have these rape allegations.
Yeah.
That are kind of unsolved, but there. And then with Il Fenomeno, you have his support for Bolsonaro in Brazil.
Right.
And I'm really afraid to give an answer because I don't have one.
No comment. We'll do it. And and again, you've spent some time in the States. I know, these are probably nowhere near as much on your radars with all the German greats that you've grew up supporting, but the old famous American one, Donovan or Dempsey?
Yeah, no, I think they both scored the equal amounts of goals for the national team. I do hope that in the near future or in some years, Josh Sargent maybe
I love
in the list.
Nice.
Because he was in Bremen. He actually moved to Bremen. He was transferred to Werder Bremen when I moved to the United States.
Nice.
So there was kind of this transfer going on. So I feel he has no idea who I am, but I feel connected to the guy, and he played well.
I love him.
He played well in Bremen.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think Dempsey, because Donovan played shortly and unsuccessfully for Leverkusen and Bayern.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Personally, I am not a big fan of both of these teams, although they're both big favorites this year for the title. Mm-hmm. I think Leverkusen is really has a chance this year.
Yeah, they're looking great.
Yeah, and Dempsey played for Tottenham, and Tottenham is kind of my one of my favorite European clubs, and so he got my vote.
They're looking great right now, that's for sure. So, all right, it's time to name your perfect 11.
Yeah, and I have to apologize again. It's very subjective.
Of course.
Maybe even a bit surprising, because I assume people are talking about Messi and Ronaldo and putting in all these great players. Mm-hmm. But I thought I'd do something different, and you get from me my favorite 11 of Werder Bremen players of
That's the best.
Of all time.
Love it.
And I'm going to start with the goalkeeper Oliver Reck, who was there from the mid-'80s until the late '90s. So he won a lot of titles when Werder Bremen was still good. And he's the one player of Werder Bremen I played with when I was 5 years old. I went to a children's day of Werder Bremen. Awesome. And he showed me what a good goalkeeper should do. So Soccer was not as big as today in the mid-90s. There was kind of a crisis, and clubs were reaching out to people to get people into the stadium. And I actually, on this day from Oliver Reck, I won my first 2 tickets to the stadium, and I took my father, not the other way around. He didn't take me; I took him.
Oh, that's awesome!
as a 5 or 6 year old, and so Oliver Reck is my favorite.
I love it.
And then you have 3 players in before him. Per Mertesacker, one of the greats from Germany, but also played in England very well.
Oh yeah, I love him. Great player.
I saw him play many times. Next to him is Naldo. Naldo, who played for Bremen, I think 2005 to 2012.
Nice.
Then went to Schalke, and his free kicks were like bombs, and then he destroyed the other goal. And wonderful player. Mm-hmm. And he had a good team with Mertesacker going on.
Oh yeah.
And then there is Rune Brunssen, also a defender, a Norwegian. He played for Werder Bremen in the 80s and 90s. Mm-hmm. And I remember one of the great club legends, Marco Bode. He was once asked about his favorite 11. And he only wrote down one player.
Oh, wow.
Rune Brunssen. And he said, if you have Rune Brunssen, you don't need anyone else. It's enough for any team in the world.
Nice.
And this is how good Rune Brunssen was, or at least people in Bremen perceive him.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah. Then my 6 is Frank Baumann.
Okay.
Captain of the 2004 league champion, Deutscher Meister, and cup winner, Werder Bremen. Mm-hmm. And now sports director of the club. I think in a very bad situation, he's doing a good job at this as well. And then I think here's the core of my team and the best, the 3 offensive midfielders. There is Kevin De Bruyne, who played for Bremen only 1 year, but it was amazing to see him play.
Love him. He's a favorite of our producer, Zach, here, so yeah.
Yeah, rightly so. I mean, he's one of the best.
Can't wait till he comes back. Yeah.
And then Johan Miku. He was also there when Bremen won the championship in 2004, and he's a genius, and I think he's very close to Zidane. Unfortunately, he didn't play much for the national team because Zidane was still playing when he was that good, and they didn't see that he was, I don't know, I think even close to Zidane. I mean, this good he was.
Wow.
And after him came Diego.
Oh yeah,
who scored this 60 meters goal when I was there in the Weser Stadium, I think against Alemannia Aachen, I'm not quite sure, but it was this close to the end of the game, 60 meters, ball went in, the whole stadium gets crazy. Just beautiful, excellent player. And then 3 strikers.
Nice.
The first one is from New Zealand. It's Winton Kiwi Rufer. The second one is Marco Bode, whom I've already mentioned. He played his whole career for Werder Bremen. He was the top scorer until someone else came to the club. I'm going to mention him in a second. And unbelievable. He played close to 400 games for Werder Bremen. He did get 0 red cards.
Wow.
Not 1, and only 10 yellow ones, but he was still the best striker until my final player of the top 11 joined the team, Claudio Pizarro.
Oh, yeah.
Claudio Pizarro, who joined Werder Bremen 4 times. He was transferred to the club 4 times at the beginning of his career, at the end of his career, in between, and he won titles. He played against relegation, and I think he still loves the club, and everybody in Bremen still loves him, and he's the final piece of my perfect 11.
That's awesome. That's a great one. You had some really favorites in there. I love Pizarro, love Diego, Mertesacker. Yeah, that's a killer 11. Thank you so much for that. So second to last question, what's your favorite jersey of all time?
Yeah, I also go with a Werder Bremen jersey, and it's the one from 96, 97. I can send you a picture later.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
And it has a very beautiful green and white stripes. from top to bottom, and on the white in the middle, a beautiful the symbol of the club in white on white. It looks very fine, very nice. They didn't play well that season, but the jersey was good.
But they look good, yeah. Now, in fact, I just ordered a Bremen. As you can see, I've got a bit of a jersey problem. My wife loves that, but I just ordered a Bremen jersey actually, so we will proudly display it in your honor. This new question I'm asking everybody, and this is kind of out there, but it's fun. If you were to describe your personal playing style to a band, what band would that be?
Yeah, this was a tough one, and even tougher than all the others, because I'm not a player for quite some time, and I never had. At first, I thought about something. Is there a band that is called something like, I don't know, Wasted Potential or something? but the problem is I never had potential.
Well, you
and
could
I
be,
wrote down.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I found a band with a good name. It's called The Broken Legs, and it's an a cappella group from the Kenyon College Musical Theater in Ohio, and they have this a cappella group. It sounds fun. Look it up on YouTube. They have some good stuff going on. They say they are gender inclusive, so they have kind of an emancipatory spirit. What I also hope to see from soccer clubs. And of course, there is this disadvantage that they are from Ohio, but since it's not Ohio State or in the color red, I can accept it, and it's fine.
It'll work just fine.
Yeah,
That's
and
awesome.
we're gonna beat them. We're gonna beat them again this year, so no worries there.
Nice, awesome. Well, Dr. Pavel Brunssen, ladies and gentlemen, this has been unbelievable, moving, enlightening. And you've made us all a little bit smarter, and I can't thank you enough for joining. It's been an absolute honor, and I'm just flabbergasted that you'd even join. And maybe you can put in a word with some of your esteemed colleagues and fellow authors that we'd love to have them, and just can't thank you enough. And it's been a real pleasure to have you, so thank you.
I want to thank you. This was a great pleasure, and it was great. And I'm looking forward to see the Werder Bremen jersey on your next show.
It'll be,
and to stay in touch, of course. Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you so much, man, and be good. And we'll keep supporting you. And viewers and listeners, go out and buy Dr. Brunssen's books, and just keep doing what you're doing. Your work is important, never more important than now. And so thank you for being a thought leader in this space, and we stand behind you 100%.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Be good. Thanks. Bye.